Well, I woke up to some shocking news today as it has been announced that Noah Syndergaard has signed a 1-year deal with the Los Angeles Angels. We're going to talk about it all right now on this special episode of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Locked On Mets is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Now, I could not just wait until tomorrow morning to have a podcast go up. I had to record something right now because this is significant. Noah Syndergaard is no longer a New York Met. So we got to go through this. Before we do, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing about baseball and the Mets at justbaseball.com. And I wrote an article yesterday, talked about it on, well, I guess today's show, how Eduardo Rodriguez's signing signified a new free agency this year. Free agency that was going to be expedited, where we would see a lot of guys signed. Noah Syndergaard gets a huge 1-year deal. That's almost a little unprecedented for someone to turn down a qualifying offer and then get more than a qualifying offer despite having the pick attached. The Angels just waving goodbye to a pick here. I mean, that is how much they want Noah Syndergaard. And I want to start there because if you go back to, I believe, last week, I did a podcast talking about why Noah Syndergaard was such a huge get for the Mets on the qualifying offer. And I sat here and I said, SNY is covering this all wrong. I got Sal Licata yelling about how he's a waste of money after not pitching in 2 years. I have Andy Martino, who I did credit as being, a reporter who knows some things, but I said, look, Martino is looking at this all wrong. He's saying this is an overpay, comparing this situation to Corey Kluber last year. Corey Kluber getting $11 million from the Yankees on a 1-year deal. And he was saying that, hey, both these guys hadn't pitched in 2 years. Kluber, more accomplished. That's what Noah would have gotten. I said, are you serious? I said, without a qualifying offer attached, Noah Syndergaard would at least get $15 million. And I said, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he got close to that qualifying offer. I'm like, he is definitely not overpaid at $18.4 million. That was the entire purpose of that podcast. You can go back and listen to it and get sad by the fact that the Mets are missing out on what could be a huge bounce back season for Noah Syndergaard. And of course, he does not get 11 million. He gets 21 million. So SNY, I'm sorry, Martino, Licata, no idea what you're talking about. So people should subscribe to this channel. Come to Locked On Mets. That's where you get some good information about the New York Mets. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to take a victory lap on those guys, but it really did frustrate me when they said that it was an overpay. And I'm like, his market is going to be far greater than Corey Kluber's, and it could be far greater than even the qualifying offer. And look what he got. He got 21 million. And so you can't fault Noah Syndergaard for taking an extra $2.6 million when it's on the table. You could fault the Mets for not meeting those demands. I'm sure Noah Syndergaard was not just full of it when he was talking about how much he wanted to remain with the Mets. So I guarantee you this contract got in front of them and they had an opportunity to match and they ultimately declined. And who knows? The Mets just made a decision to hire Billy Epler as their GM. This offer could have been on the table for a couple of days now. The Mets could have been telling Noah's camp, we're about to make a hire. Let us do that first. And now that they did, maybe Epler was part of the decision making that said, no, we're not going to match. Go to LA. And if it is that, if that's the case, congratulations. Billy Epler finally got some pitching out to LA. What a concept. But when it comes to the situation for the Mets, how can you not be disappointed? A guy who had an unbelievable season in 2015 as a rookie to help the Mets get to a World Series, the only winning pitcher for for the Mets in that World Series, the guy who threw the ball at Cities Escobar's head and showed that there was some fight left in the Mets, at least for a night, and said, hey, come meet me 60 feet, 6 inches. That guy, the guy who had one of, if not the best season a starting pitcher had in 2016, really second behind only Jose Fernandez, an unbelievable season where his WAR was over 6, who carried you to the playoffs that year. A guy who loved being a Met, a guy who you could see a bunch of grown men wearing long flowing blonde wigs and holding up Thor hammers on a random Tuesday night. It sucks. It sucks to see one of the players that you grew up rooting for or that you've just been rooting for the past 5, 6, 7 years go somewhere else, especially when the narrative that was being sold by those like me was that this was a done deal. And I apologize for that. I didn't think that there was going to be a team that was going to spend more than the qualifying offer. But one of the things that was concerning me as this continued and he didn't just accept right away is I was like, man, he's probably getting a lot of interest on the market. And, he didn't get a multi-year deal, but he got 21. And you can't fault him. You really can't. You could fault the Mets a bit, but what I will say is that this could work out as long as you pivot and re-sign Marcus Stroman, or at least Gossman or Ray. I know that there is still the Max Scherzer pipe dream that's out there. That's not happening. I don't believe it. I don't think Max Scherzer would wear a Mets uniform. So at this point, I'm looking at Marcus Stroman. Honestly, it's what does he want? He wants 25 a year over 6 years. Just give it to him. You know why? Because Marcus Stroman is a pitcher that's going to age very well. The guy takes care of his body better than almost anyone in the sport. Not to say Noah doesn't, but for Marcus Stroman, considering his makeup, considering the fact that he doesn't throw 99, I just look at him as somebody that'll age really well. He's adding to his arsenal every year. I think he will be a quality starting pitcher for some time. And at this point, you can't lose him. You can't have somebody else poach Marcus Stroman too. The one thing that can work out for the Mets when it comes to Noah Syndergaard, they do get a comp pick, which I know is not going to be the most exciting of consolation prizes for those who are mourning the loss of Syndergaard today. But what I will say is at least you get something for a player that could have left for nothing. I mean, imagine the Mets didn't extend him the qualifying offer. It'd be even a bigger failure. And I will say that if they do spend $21+ million on another starting pitcher, this could be okay because it's not like Noah Syndergaard was the safest bet. I referenced before Zach Wheeler and his return from Tommy John. It took more than 2 years to get back to where he was. His first season back, there were still more arm injuries, still more problems there. He eventually got it right. I felt like Noah Syndergaard was a better bounce back candidate to come off this injury sooner because at least he is a more accomplished pitcher at this stage than Wheeler was then. But we have no idea what Noah's season is going to look like. We really don't. And I hope he's healthy. I hope he has a great year. I hope he gets an even bigger contract next offseason. But when it comes to building out your ball club, this is not the end of the world. As long as that money that you're now saving, that $18.4 million, is getting spread out elsewhere and you're still addressing this rotation. So if you take that 18.4, you were a little bit torn on if you could afford Syndergaard and Stroman, and now you just meet Stroman's demands. All right, well, look at your rotation. It's certainly a rotation that has a higher floor with Stroman in it instead of Syndergaard because I'm pretty confident you're going to get 33 starts from Marcus Stroman next year. I'm certainly not that confident you would have gotten 33 starts from Noah Syndergaard. And right now, this is a rotation that needs stability, that still has the Jacob deGrom question marks, that still has Carlos Carrasco in his mid-30s, that just watched Taijuan Walker have a bad second half, that still isn't sure what David Peterson's going to be after a sophomore slump of a season where he got hurt for the year. And they're not sure if Tyler McGill was just a flash in the pan or something legit. Now, if you bring in Marcus Stroman, all right, you got deGrom, you got Stroman, you got those question marks. You still have Trevor Williams to bring some depth. I feel a lot better about the Mets rotation. And then maybe they go out and find somebody that's in that second or third tier to build out some depth. Losing Noah Syndergaard, though, is a really tough pill to swallow. And mostly because he is such a fan Wow, can't even talk. I'm broken up about it. What can I say? I was going to call him a fan favorite. He is a fan favorite. Who wouldn't be? He's a Marvel superhero. He's got a book club. He's got the flowing locks. He drinks bone broth. All of that stuff that makes Noah Syndergaard a quirky delight. That was just a great Met. At some point throughout this offseason, maybe we'll really dive into his career and remember what it was with the Mets. But today, a sad loss. I'm glad he got paid out in Los Angeles, and we'll see how the Mets pivot from here. I don't think it is the end of the world as long as they respond correctly. And responding correctly, in my opinion, is signing Marcus Stroman to a deal sooner rather than later. Anyway, that's going to be all for this bonus episode of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. On tomorrow's show, going to be talking with Taylor Blake Ward, former host of Locked On Angels, who used to cover Billy Epler and had some glowing things to say about him on Twitter last night. So I hit him up and said, let's talk about this. You love Billy Epler. I want to know why. So make sure you tune in to tomorrow's episode for that. I also may be talking to Locked On Angels, the current host, about this situation. That might be available on that feed, on my feed. Who knows? A lot of stuff to cover today. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan so you don't miss any of it. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Prospects, hosted by my guy RM Layton. Locked On MLB Prospects is the best place to go to learn about the stars of tomorrow. You can follow Locked On MLB Prospects wherever you get podcasts.